Hi everyone, welcome back. This is the video for week 4 of online learning, which is the week of May 4th. This week is going to be a shorter week than the previous weeks because mid-marks are due on Friday, May 8th. That means that there will not be an assignment for Friday or for Thursday. Instead, you're supposed to use those 2 days to work on any work that you may be missing, make sure you're caught up with all of your classes so that you can get the highest mid-marks possible. Just like in a normal marking period, mid-marks is not a grade that goes on your report card. It's not an official record. It's just a halfway point through the marking period to let you know and your parents know how you're doing right now. All right, so since there's no assignment for Thursday or Friday, that means there's only going to be assignments for Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. So there's 3 points of assignments, not the regular 5 for this week. So on my end, I'm just giving you one 3-point assignment. I'll get to that in a minute. First, I want to address late work, how you've been doing overall, my grading policy, I want to repeat that, and then go over last week's work. Then I'll introduce what we're doing for this week. All right, so late work. I mentioned last week that if you are submitting work more than a week late, that you have to let me know that you've done so. Otherwise, I'm not going to see it. I don't get a notification always when you complete work. So if it's not for the previous week, I'm not going to check it unless it's mid-marks or the end of the marking period. That being said, you don't have to let me know for this week because it is mid-marks on Friday. I will be checking back for all late work. So if you're doing work that was from the first week, second week, third week, I'm going to check all of it again this Friday to make sure I didn't miss anything, and you're given credit for all of your late work. All right? The community ecology review questions was the Schoology assignment for last week. I wanted to talk about that for a minute. Those of you who did it did pretty great overall. There were really good examples that a lot of you gave for community interactions, reminding you again that mutualism, commensalism, parasitism, predation, including herbivory, and competition. There were a couple students that were confused on what competition was, so I wanted to clarify. When I mean competition for a community interaction, I'm talking about 2 different species that are competing for the same resources. For example, a lion and a hyena, or rather all lions and all hyenas, are in constant competition with each other, not individual competition, but constant competition as species because they have the same food sources that they're competing for. What I don't mean is competition between 2 people or groups of people over something specific. That is competition in the general sense. In the colloquial sense, it's not a scientific, biological competition. I mean a different word when I say that. So when I say competition for this chapter, I mean between 2 different species, between 2 completely separate populations are competing over the same resources. So I wanted to clarify that. Those of you that gave me examples generally did pretty good. I gave you comments. If you missed the mark a little bit or if it was really great, I gave you a comment. There were a lot of you that started the community ecology review questions, meaning you did the first 2 questions that were matching, but you did not do the last question, which was open-ended. So if you did not complete the entire assignment, I can't give you credit for it. The reason being, we are only giving all credit or no credit for assignments. That means if you make an honest effort and you complete everything that the assignment asks you to complete, you will get full credit. If you do not complete the entire assignment and you did not give an honest effort for the portion for which you completed, you're not getting any credit. So I'm not giving partial credit. No teacher should be giving partial credit. So for those of you who did the matching portion but you did not do the open-ended question, you're going to get a 0. Unless I see you complete those questions soon. So you have all week to revisit those questions, and then I can regrade them by the end of the week. All right? Okay, I think that's everything for last week. Moving on to the project this week we're not going to be doing any new Khan assignments. There's not going to be any additional learning because we've already had 3 weeks of Khan assignments and this is a short week. So I'm giving you a project on invasive species. Invasive species was one of the topics on Khan Academy last week. So you should already be somewhat familiar with invasive species if you did the work on Khan. There was an article on invasive species. There's probably a question or two about invasive species after that question said at the end there on Khan Academy. So to refresh your memory, what an invasive species is, first we have to keep in mind that the entire ecosystem that you're looking at is built on a series of community interactions. So these two organisms in mutualism, these two organisms in parasitism, these two organisms are in competition. All these interactions work together to make an ecosystem, to make an ecological web of community interactions and species that are in close relation to each other. So if all of this is highly related, this ecological web, if you bring in a new species, it can mess up the whole thing. Reason being, the species that are already in an ecosystem, they're in there in a specific way. Either they're the very bottom, like everything eats it, or the very top, they're the top predator, they're somewhere in the middle, they have a place. And if you bring in a species that doesn't have any predators into an area, it can be catastrophic. So let me give you an example, something you're familiar with. And we've talked about this in class before, the spotted lanternfly. So you've seen these spotted lanternflies probably around Norristown. They're certainly on the campus a lot. You've probably seen them around the town, especially if you have a house or an apartment complex where there is more open land, there's more trees. You've definitely seen these guys before. They're these pretty big compared to what we're used to, maybe like this big. Little flies, they're called flies, but they don't quite look like flies. They really look like beetles. They have a reddish body when they lift their wings up, and when their wings are down, it's more of a grayish blue, and they're speckled with white dots. And at least for me, I get pretty scared of them because they're kind of huge, but they're actually harmless for humans. What they do damage, though, is the trees. You see them climbing up the trees, and they will hurt the trees over time. So the reason for that is because they're not native to this area. The spotted lanternflies, you see them all over the place because they're new. They came from Asia. Someone brought them in somehow to Pennsylvania a few years ago, and their population has just exploded because nothing eats them. There is no natural predator for the spotted lanternfly, and since nothing eats them, they can just go on eating the trees, sucking out the good parts of the trees that they like, and the trees slowly die. We've seen this over the years with a bunch of other beetles that have very similar interactions with trees, and ecologists and scientists have had to try different measures to kill these bugs. So that's one example of an invasive species. Another example, which you would be less familiar with, but that I'm giving you. So since I got married, I moved to Green Lane, so I don't live in Norristown anymore. Green Lane is a lake half an hour north of Norristown. And in this lake, it's actually a man-made lake called a reservoir. And so the water there, we try to keep it really protected, trying to make sure there's no contaminants in the water. If you want to take a boat out on the water at Green Lane, you have to register your boat there and keep it there for 10 days so they can inspect it. What they're inspecting it for is called zebra mussels. So zebra mussels are another kind of invasive species that have invaded lakes around the area. And they're this tiny little mussel, which is a tiny animal, looks like a clam. Maybe you've eaten them before in seafood. But zebra mussels are a little different because they're not from this area and nothing will eat them. And so they will grow out of control and hurt the ecosystem. So at Green Lane, they have to inspect your boats for 10 days to make sure there's no zebra mussels on them before they go into the water. So what you're going to do, kind of similar to what I did, you're going to give an overview of an invasive species in this invasive species project. Actually, you're going to make a wanted poster. So the two examples I just gave, the zebra mussel and the spotted lanternfly, Let me give you a further example as to make them a wanted poster. So this spotted lanternfly, kind of like the old Wild West wanted posters, like this guy is most wanted for robbing this bank or for killing this person, right? You're going to make a big wanted poster. You put up a big picture of the spotted lanternfly. You would say, wanted, spotted lanternfly, and the spotted lanternfly came from this area. It's hurting these trees. Those are its crimes. This is what it looks like, and we want to catch it. Same with the zebra mussel. You would put up a picture of the zebra mussel, say wanted, what the zebra mussel is, where it came from, why it's harmful to the environment. And you can be creative with this. I gave an example on the assignment for the invasive species project that is one another student did. I actually used this for a 7th grade project when I taught 7th grade a couple years ago. And since we're going online, it actually makes sense to do a project of that level here since I can't be with you in class. And that student at that time gave a Pete the worm, so he gave it a name. And then he said that Pete was doing all of these things, which was harmful for the environment, but that he also robbed a bank. So he threw in a little bit of creativity. Of course, this invasive worm species is not actually doing some bank robbing, but you can be creative with the assignment. You can make it colorful. You can do it however you like, but it should be in Google Docs. So everything should be hopefully self-explanatory in the instructions for the invasive species project. If there's any questions, let me know. I also attached an article as another example of invasive species. It's for goldfish, not your regular goldfish that you might have that you went on a carnival, but it's these rather large goldfish that someone got as a pet once and then released them into a lake, and then now there's thousands of them in this lake in Colorado. So that's just another example of an invasive species for you to read about. All right, so this is due on Wednesday. You have today, Tuesday, and Wednesday to complete it. There's a series of questions for you to answer about the invasive species and then actually making the wanted poster. All of that, the directions, and where you're going to complete the assignment is all in the Google Doc posted with the assignment on Schoology. Again, let me know if there's any questions. I'll remind you that I have office hours every Monday through Friday from 11 to 12 and from 3 to 4. So you can go to the updates. I posted the link there a couple weeks ago. I can post it again for how to sign up for my office hours, or you can shoot me a message if you want to get in touch with me. All right. I think that's all for this week. I will see you guys next week. Next week, we're going to start looking at food webs. All right. See you guys.